for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Russia. Russian investigators said that two suspects in the attempted assassination of a senior military intelligence official will soon be interrogated. The local newspaper has reported that the questioning will be followed by formal charges, though authorities have not confirmed whether the suspects are in custody for now. General Vladimir Alexeyev, the deputy head of Russia's military intelligence agency, was shot inside his Moscow's apartment building on Friday. Investigators say an unidentified gunman fired several shots before fleeing the scene. While General Alexeyev has undergone surgery and remains under medical supervision, reports suggest that the general has regained consciousness and is recovering. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused Ukraine of being behind the attack, claiming it was meant to undermine peace talks. Ukraine has denied any involvement. Alexeyev has previously been sanctioned by both the United States and the European Union. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew Latham. He's an international affairs expert, joining us live from Minneapolis. Thank you very much, Mr. Latham, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what do we know so far about this individual, and also who has targeted or how?
Well, we know that he was an important general, and in this era of warfare with generals matter a very great deal. So taking out this one, even though not a frontline general, but a logistics support general, could have a serious impact on Russia's warfighting capability. Not decisive, but serious. It remains to be seen who's responsible. The Ukrainians would love to frame this as a product of internal fighting within the Russian armed forces between various generals and various branches of the armed forces, a kind of internecine struggle that culminated in this. That makes Russia look weak and divided, etc. And of course, the Russians want to frame this as a Ukrainian act of terrorism, as an illegitimate act of assassinating a military leader, not on the battlefield, but well behind the battlefield. And so right now, both sides are trying to position themselves as the innocent party, as the offended party, and it remains to be seen how that's going to play out. It'll be interesting to see who finally is convicted of this, even though I don't place very much faith in Russian courts these days.
And this general, in case, well, we can only speculate here, but in case this attack was done by someone from Russia, within Russia, why do you think, what could have been the reason?
Well, it's a power play. It remains to be seen exactly. You're right, we simply don't know right now, but generically speaking, this would be a classical kind of power play, that there are various factions within the Russian regime. They all have slightly different takes on who has President Putin's ear, how the war should be conducted, if peace is in the offing, those sorts of things. And rather than sort these out around a negotiating table, sometimes they resort to more direct and kinetic means, assassinating their opponents, for example. That would be an extreme, but it's happened. And I think that's what's going on, arguably, here. At least that's the way the Ukrainians want to portray this, because it suits their purposes. The Russians are internally divided, therefore they're weak, therefore we're winning. And the Russians, of course, will do anything in their power to paint a different picture, which is this was not a function of internal conflict, political power struggles. This was an Ukrainian act of terrorism. That's another battle space, and it remains to be seen who's going to win this particular battle in that information warfare battle space.
Right. Now, looking at the negotiations, do you think this will somehow jeopardize the negotiation that's ongoing? And also, since the territory concession and the sticking points still do exist, how do you see this upcoming negotiations changing or making any difference?
Well, again, as I've said many times in many different venues, I don't think this is negotiable, this conflict. The objectives of both sides, the red lines of both sides, are simply mutually incompatible, having to do with territory, the neutralization and disarmament of Ukraine, etc., I think this will be resolved in one of two ways, and they're interrelated. On the battlefield, the Russians are making incremental gains, grinding gains, costly gains, but they're making gains, and they're likely to get what they want on the battlefield. The only other way this ends is through mutual exhaustion. Neither side can continue anymore because they lack the manpower, depth, resources, the material, the ammunition, etc. That's a real possibility as well. And it's only though when Russia achieves its battlefield objectives or this mutual exhaustion sets in that negotiations are going to be serious. Right now it's theater. Both sides want to appear that they're willing to talk, but neither side is willing to make the concessions necessary for a peace agreement. And this latest business with this attempted assassination of the Russian general, I think, is not going to factor all that prominently in this process. It's a sideshow, as it were.
And since you mentioned the two scenarios, both scenarios don't include U.S. mediation role, or is there U.S. mediation that could lead to each of these scenarios? What could be U.S.'s role?
I think to the extent that the Russians and Ukrainians don't trust each other, with good reason, having a party at the table which can play the helpful fixer, the kind of interlocutor. If it's direct negotiations, they're at the table, they're kind of trying to smooth the interaction of the two parties. And if it's indirect, they're shuttling back and forth between two different hotels in some setting. So I think at this point, the United States is probably the only mediator conceivable. It's not perfect because neither side trusts the U.S. entirely, but neither side trusts any other party anymore. And so, yes, the United States has a helpful fixer role to play. Will it be decisive? That remains to be seen. I think it will only come to fruition if and when this exhaustion sets in, or when the Russians are finally satisfied. And then it's a matter of, can the Americans both communicate between both sides, and can they apply pressure where necessary to get both sides to make concessions? So yes, a role for the U.S., but a marginal one.
Thank you for sharing that. And last but not least, what about EU's role? What about West's role in, all in all, is Ukraine? Do you think this war has shown limits of EU's mediation and efforts?
Yes, well, there are two roles that the European Union could play, one of which is mediator, and I don't think that's very much on the table. The Russians in particular are opposed to that. And the other role is the security guarantee. If there is a deal and the Ukrainians want some kind of Article 5 without being members of NATO, Article 5 security guarantees, it's likely to be the Europeans, not the Americans, who provide troops on the ground. And it remains to be seen if they actually have the political will or the military wherewithal to pull that off. But mediator, EU playing an important role, and that underscores limits of the European Union as a player in these sorts of conflicts, but possibly as a security guarantor going forward. That's a more real possibility.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Andrew Latham for joining us today and sharing that insight. Thank you very much.